Hey everyone, let's dive right into this explainer and master data visualization. And I don't mean just as some necessary chore you have to get through, but as a completely new language. We are constantly bombarded with metrics, reports, and literally endless rows of numbers. But how do we actually make sense of them all? And maybe more importantly, how on earth do we keep our audience awake when we present them? Think about the last really dense spreadsheet you stared at. Ask yourself, why did that information fade from your memory almost instantly? Seriously, try to recall a single row of data from a report you read last week. It's incredibly tough, right? You hit this absolute mental gridlock. And that's simply because our brains just aren't wired to process massive walls of text and grids of numbers efficiently. Well, the staggering answer is that we process images 60,000 times faster than text or a table. 60,000! That's because 40% of our nerve fibers are connected directly to our retinas. I mean, our minds can see an image for just 13 milliseconds and store that information. So this proves that visual content isn't just about making things look pretty. It's actually biologically optimized for human retention. To practice what we're about to preach, let's quickly look at our blueprint for today's explainer. We're going to cover the power of visuals, knowing your data, choosing the right chart, the visual mantra, and finally, design and color principles. All right, starting with section 1, the power of visuals and the cognitive power of images. We're laying our foundation here, focusing on why visual content is literally the ultimate cure for death by PowerPoint. Now, check out this quote from Edward Tufte. He says, "Graphical excellence is that which gives to the viewer the greatest number of ideas in the shortest time with the least ink in the smallest space." This perfectly nails the ultimate goal of visual efficiency. It's not about making things complicated or adding a bunch of decorative fluff. It's about maximum insight with minimum clutter. That right there is the absolute gold standard. Moving right along to section 2, knowing your data, which is really the alphabet of visual storytelling. Before you can even think about building a chart, you absolutely have to know what kind of raw materials you're working with. So, if we strip away all the noise, we can clearly contrast measurable quantitative data against non-numeric qualitative data. Ask yourself, are you dealing with hard numbers, like tracking exact monthly revenue? Or are you looking at qualitative categories, like sorting customer feedback into positive and negative buckets? Recognizing this difference dictates literally everything you do next. You simply cannot treat a geographical region the exact same way you treat a profit margin. Now, these base data types interact in 7 distinct relationships, everything from a simple ranking to a really complex series plotted out over time. Knowing these 7 relationships is kind of like knowing the basic rules of grammar for our visual language. Are you comparing parts to a whole, tracking a trend over a year? Defining that relationship is exactly how you choose the right visual tool for the job. Which brings us to section 3, choosing the right chart, the vocabulary of visualization. We know our alphabet and our grammar, so let's build that vocabulary by matching those relationships we just talked about to the correct chart format. Take a look here. Notice how just looking at a basic bar chart reveals the highs and lows so much faster than reading raw numbers. If you just saw 45, 56, and 36 sitting in a grid, you'd have to actively calculate those differences in your head. But here, your eyes immediately tell you February was a massive peak and March was a slump. It completely takes that cognitive heavy listing away from your audience. Now, when you're dealing with frequency, histograms beautifully handle distributions, while your standard pie charts and donuts are perfect for comparing parts of a whole. But hey, a quick pro tip for you. Keep your pie charts strictly under 5 data groups. Any more than that, and they lose their impact and become impossible to read quickly. Trust me, nobody wants to decipher a pizza cut into 30 tiny slices. What if you need to find correlations? Well, scatter plots map the spread perfectly across a coordinate plane. On the flip side, heat maps use color intensity to help your viewers digest matrix data at a single glance. Think about web page analytics, right? The hot colors instantly show you where users are clicking the most. You literally feel the intensity before you even read a single number. And when you're handling real complexity, you have to match the tool to the task. You'll want line charts for trends, bubble charts for multidimensional data, and radar charts for cyclical behaviors. By matching the specific data relationship to the correct visual format, you completely remove that cognitive friction, allowing the actual insights to shine through loud and clear. All right, section 4, the visual mantra, guiding the viewer's journey. With our vocabulary locked in, let's learn how to structure our message using Ben Schneiderman's legendary 1996 framework.
So, Schneiderman's visual information seeking mantra is this progressive three-step rhythm that perfectly mirrors how we naturally explore information. Step 1, overview first, so they grasp the broader context. Step 2, zoom and filter, letting them select interesting subsets. And step 3, details on demand. Basically, you don't hand someone a microscope until you've already shown them the map.
This quote from Isabel Mariels really shifts how we should think about our tools. She says, in a sense, visualizations are paragraphs about data, and they should be treated as such. Just like written words, charts have to be combined with intentional structure to actually tell a story. I mean, you wouldn't just scatter random sentences on a blank page and call it a book, right? The exact same rule applies here. Your visualizations need a coherent narrative arc.
Okay, bringing it home with Section 5, Design and Color Principles. The grammar and syntax, it is time for the interior design of our blueprint, mastering layout and color so your visual story isn't just told, but deeply felt and remembered.
Edward Tufte defines layout as spatial encoding. Basically, this is the foundational grid that dictates how your audience perceives and remembers information. Every visualization starts with a blank dimensional space. Where you place elements fundamentally alters their meaning and importance. It's essentially telling the viewer exactly what to care about first, second, and third. And as we see here, establishing a strong layout completely controls the flow of information at varying levels of detail. By organizing spatial proportions like position and size, you are taking control of your audience's perception. You're deliberately guiding their eyes through the visual hierarchy you've built, ensuring absolutely nothing gets lost in translation. Now let's talk about color. Because color absolutely dominates human perception, you have to master its three dimensions: hue, brightness, and saturation. Hue is the color category itself, your blues, reds, yellows. Brightness is how light or dark it is. And saturation, that's the intensity. The less saturated a color is, the closer it drifts toward a neutral, washed-out gray. To make this totally foolproof, Cynthia Brewer advises matching your palette directly to your data type for absolute visual clarity. Use monochromatic sequential palettes for numbers moving from low to high. Use diverging palettes when you need to highlight a critical middle value, like a 0 or an average. And go with qualitative palettes using totally different hues when you just need to clearly separate distinct categories. I love this quote from Alberto Cairo. He points out that effective visualization transcends just showing data. It uncovers entirely new realities. When you execute this properly, your audience is going to start noticing patterns and opportunities that were completely invisible when they were buried inside that massive spreadsheet. You are quite literally bringing hidden truths to light. So, as we wrap up this explainer and you tackle your next project, think about how you can use this blueprint to transform passive data into a compelling, unforgettable visual story. Ask yourself, are your presentations just displaying boring numbers, or are they revealing completely new realities? Keep that question in mind the next time you set out to visualize your data.